George Macy, A.J. Rogers, Asa Hilliard, Sheikh Anta Diop, thank you, Chancellor, everybody. And they started bringing this to us. And somebody like J.A. Rogers, I went back and read all of his books, from Superman to Man, Sex and Race Volumes 1 to 3, Nature Knows No Color Line, all of these books, and I'm like, all he did was talk about the Moors. All he was proving this when the prophet was alive, in the 20s. You know what I'm saying? Before any of us was here, everybody knew. So how come we ain't knew? Because there's a concerted effort within the community to keep us separated and to keep us from focusing on stuff that can actually make us a collective, viable force. Who all have a certain understanding of their nationality, which then will allows them greater latitude when it comes to things like finances, resources, land, things like that. So, going back to that, what we did here was, oh, I got Indian in my family. Right? We all heard that. Because it's true. You understand? It's true. You got more Indians in the so-called family than so-called Africans. And this is no slight to anyone from Africa. But ask yourself this. How is it that there's a DNA test for me to test what tribe I come from in Africa, but there's no DNA test for the Africans to see how they can be related to us? Does that make sense? How would only go one way? That don't make sense. How is it that I can talk to my great-great-grandmother and she could talk to me about the Washoe and how her mother grew up on a plantation that was owned by black Germans called the Hildebrands? And she, bless the dead, Mother Edna, she would always get her hair braided. She was about 90 something, and her braids long. You know what I'm saying? And I always remember her getting her hair braided like that. And when I did the knowledge to it, I realized that these people that they're referring to as Indians is two types. There's the so-called Native Americans that came over here, you know, with the invasion in the 13th century with Genghis, aka Genghis Khan and them. And then there was the Siberians that they started to import from Russia after the real translated slave trade, when they started bringing Europeans over here on boats in the 1800s. Okay? Ask yourself, like I said, how is it that you could see a dinosaur bone from 24 million years ago, but I'm asking to see a slave ship from 150 years ago? Nobody can show me a plank. How is it that they do that? Right? How does that make sense? And how is it that people have made millions of dollars off of perpetuating something that they cannot really prove? And that has led us to almost squalor because we have been dispossessed of our own homeland. They have made us foreign to where we from. Let me tell you, if your mother was born here, her 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 mother was born here, you ain't from nowhere else. You from where you at. You know what I'm saying? You from where you been at. So, in researching that, years ago, I went to the Shinnecock Powwow. Big up to the Shinnecock Nation out there in Northeast New York. And we went up there, and the Shinnecock held it down, was doing their whole thing. Now, the next day was Labor Day. And that happens in Brooklyn, right? So I went there, we recorded, I did a whole video called Native Blood, live from the Shinnecock Powwow, and I showed the juxtaposition how the same Moors in the Shinnecock Powwow is the same people in Labor Day. It's just that the ones in the Shinnecock was born mainland, the ones in Labor Day is coming from the Antilles, which they now call the Caribbean, okay? because that's all America too. So in researching that, naturally I went into my lineage and my family's history and all that, and then found out what clans and what tribes and all that they was from and all of that. However, I didn't leave it there, because what we don't understand is that your tribal name, let's say your American Indian name, let's say your Moorish title, work in tandem. Like some Moors believe that you got to change your entire name because your name came from a slave name. But see, that's not true. The slaves, who are the Slovaks, who are the Bosnia Herzegovinians or the Circassians, they adopted your names, and that's what made those names Slovak names, aka slave names. So Johnson, Biggins, McAfee, Smith, Rogers, but all of these are American names. You're not going to go, whoever in here ever met a white man named Washington? One person? One? So think about that. Think about that. All of us in here, all of the different names that's in here, you don't only met one original man named Washington. But this white man that they show us is supposed to be the king, is supposed to be the person. No. Because then when I researched him, I found out that no, he was a French Huguenot. He was descended from the French Huguenots. The French Huguenots were Moors who, after the fall of Granada, wound up in France, and then from France came all the way to South Carolina. And then hooked up with their cousins that was already there, and then married back into the Washington family. The Washington family wound up turning their name to Washington, and here we go. When you read the reports of him, there's books on him, and you read the reports of him, they said he was a tall, dark complexioned man. That ain't the dude they showing you. I'm gonna show you who he is in a minute. So, this American Indian, they talk about the sacred who. This is why the so-called Siberian types, they lived in wickiups, what they call teepees, because they were squatters. They wasn't from here. They didn't build none of the mounds that was here. They didn't build none of the pyramids that was here. They didn't build none of that. They lived off the land, literally. And they took the adopted or corporate name of the people who allowed them to stay after we put them on timeout and locked them up in the reservations. This is why a Tasalagi or Choctaw is different than a Cherokee. See, a Choctaw is different than a Choctaw. You understand? The original is the original. That which came later is the corporate aggregate. That's why you can be, if you're an American, you can't be a citizen of the United States. Because citizens of the United States live in a democracy. Americans live in a republic, a constitutional republic that has a national